Hi, everyone. Reverend John Owens here to talk more about our CnC program. And today we wanted to talk about strategies of how to deal with those youth that are always busy, between soccer and baseball and choir practice and all these different things that keep youth busy. It makes it sometimes harder and harder to get that dedication that we're looking for to join our program. And so I have here Kellor Smith, who was the former Youth and Family Services Director at St. John's Episcopal Church in Oakland, who is going to share a little bit about her strategies and journey about overcoming this barrier.
Good morning. I think it is our kids this year, especially after COVID, are even more overcommitted because families are trying to make up for all the sports and music and all that they missed. In introducing the CnC program, when people drag their kids to the first meeting, I always ask the kids how many are there because their parents want you there. And every hand always goes up. But we introduce it in the spring so that families can have that slower conversation, not like we have to sign up next week. And I think that helps. And a lot of reaching out to each kid and each parent separately, usually, might just be texting with the kid, because that may be the only way they'll speak to you. But they live in a life of overcommitment, like John said. But church has never been something you had to commit to. Church is always like, oh, we'll drop in if we have nothing else to do, or we only go on the first Sunday of the month, whatever. So that's the real dilemma, is pointing out to the parents, especially, this is not a drop in, oh, I gotta leave early because I have scouts kind of program. This is a commitment. And, soccer coaches and music theater people and all, they ask for commitments. They have parents sign things. And with CnC, they have to sign. And in our paperwork, it'll say, how many days you can meet or miss over the month or over the season, pardon me. And, there's a little flip out on that. But once they get started, they're pretty good about it. And the kids can actually be better than the parents. A kid will be 10 minutes late and they'll go, oh my God, my dad didn't get up in time, or, whatever. So once it starts, the kids start to take some ownership of being there. Even if it means 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Getting kids convinced that they want to be there, I think, is what John has sort of been asking. And it is individual with each kid. So if you know your kids, or the kids that are starting to join, I would make an effort to reach out to them individually, talk about all the things they love, and talk about, what this could mean to them. And I think the biggest thing is for them to understand that this is not, we're not pushing God and everything down your throat. Most kids go, ooh, church, Bible study, ooh, I'm out. And, that's that 3-second decision making on their part. So it's really getting across to them, explaining to them some of the things we're going to be doing, visiting other churches, or, fundraising for a program that they're passionate about, making a difference, the importance of working together. I always talk to them about group projects at school, because they all hate group projects at school, right? Because one kid ends up doing the most, whatever. But I talk about that in terms of learning to use your voice in a group project, which you'll do some of them in this. And how do you balance that out? And this is a skill you're going to need at work. You're going to need a place to practice this before you get there. Each of our lessons has a learning dynamic at the bottom. And so I use those at the front page, use those to talk to families. For kids, though, I talk about the fun stuff, that we'll have lunch together every Sunday, or that we will have a couple field trips. We've gone to, a Buddhist church, a temple, and my kids love that because it is totally all gold. If you've ever been in there, the whole altar is pure gold. And when I tell the kids that, that's enough to get them to go. Who hasn't had that? We talk a lot about the retreat, that we're taking apart religion, and we want them to think about what they like or don't like, and everything they say is acceptable. There's no, oh, you shouldn't say that in this class. I'd really try to make, and they're only hearing a third of what I'm saying. So, I may have to say it a few times. I think for the reluctant kid who says, oh yeah, church isn't my thing, whatever. And I make sure that they understand that they don't have to be confirmed. This is just a class. How can you, I say to the kids, how can you tell me that you hate God or that you are an atheist or whatever if you've never really learned about it, right? I don't really trust your opinion until I know that you've had some discussion. So they do that and they kind of hear that. And, there's a lot of times when kids will go, well, this is just crazy. What do you mean Jesus walked on water? This is makeup. This is pretend. So we talk about that. And this last season that we did it, one of the kids said to the clergy was there, so like, everything in that Bible, right? You read it every day and everything you believe is right there in the Bible. And for us, we sort of pick it apart a little bit because it's about deconstructing their already impacted what they think. I know what the church is. I hate it. I'm not going. So how do you help them get inside their own head and the conversation with other peers and really encourage them to speak up about it? And it's been incredibly difficult few years because, there's been much more conservative churches being more vocal. So the kids automatically assume that, one kid said, well, so where are you on homosexuality? And I said, where am I personally, or where is our church? We had that discussion. And we have we have kids that look for where they can fit in at the beginning. But as you go through the program, you begin to realize, as they do too, they fit in many more spaces than they thought. And that's really opening up some paths that, they never even knew existed. And it's fun for us because we're like, whoa, where did that kid just move over to this side of the discussion? I always tell families and kids, I expect them to leave the program with more questions than when they came in. This is not a be all end all and the class is over and, you never have to talk about church again. This is a lifelong conversation. And wouldn't it be great if you had some knowledge and some ability to have a real opinion? Not just mimicking your parents, which is what, many of our kids do. And we've had parents complain that their kids' beliefs start becoming different than theirs or their attitude about it. And I'm like, that's their voice. And, they're 13 to say 16 and their voice is going to change over and over as they grow, so don't assume at this age that's what they're thinking. We have a program for parents with CnC, and the real trick is to get the parents to take it around the same time that your youth are taking it, if you can do that, because it allows for family conversation. It allows for, oh, did you talk about this? Or I had to do my thing on this. And for some families, that was really phenomenal. One kid told me, please tell my mother that I don't want to talk about it in the car on the way going home. And that was like her favorite thing to do. We could talk about it, So I talked to her, so she found another time, but they participate in the church services, which, they usually, unless they're an acolyte, which we don't always have them in our parish due to size. And that's they like that. They're like, oh, I don't want to do it. But once they do it, like, oh, passing out communion or being an acolyte or being a reader is pretty awesome. And they often help with baptism also. So they realize the parts of it. They get to create their own religion. Who doesn't want to create their own religion? At one retreat, each group had to, we broke down what a service looks like and who cares and why is it that way? And then we send them off to create their religion. And they're given one element, whether it be oil or, baptismal water, various things, and they have to use a candle. So this one group, when it was their turn to present to everybody else, they brought out a blanket for everybody and with a candle. And they talked about how hard they worked on the first day. And the rest of the days they were going to rest. So they gave everybody a blanket, they all laid down and they took a nap for a short time. But that element of reflection, of resting, is a pretty important part in our faith, we had to pay the company that we were with for getting the wool blankets cleaned because the kids didn't think of that. But that's what I think. We have our retreat in like late October, and I ask kids to stay at least to the retreat. Don't make a decision until you've been to, some of the conversations and classes until then, because they start to really build community. And that's how you get kids, right? Community, 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 and their community, not the church community to start with. So I find that many of them will stay once they've been on the retreat. They're like, oh, these are cool kids, and we're talking about cool things. But most of the time, I have continued conversations with the individual youth throughout the program, just to check in where they are, to demystify something they don't understand, or to find a balance for them. In our church, we often have kids that have special education issues, emotional issues, and so we always, everybody's welcome. So working with them differently with their mentor, and I think the mentor is an important part of the program, because whoa, this adult who doesn't know me wants to hear what I have to say. And in the beginning, the kids don't have anything to say. Oh yeah, okay, whatever. But as time goes on, you hear these conversations going on between the mentor and the youth, and the youth are really happy for the most part. They're like, oh, this guy is pretty cool. I didn't know he's really that religious, or I didn't know that he questioned church when he was growing up. And so those things, that building community again within the church with each other is huge. And the hard part for some parishes is if you also have a youth group and confirm not conform, many families can only choose one. So in our church, that kind of, when it's a CnC year, it kind of cuts our youth group in half. Some come, not always, because they've already given a lot of time, and they've still got basketball and flute lessons. So it's hard in that way. But when the kids from CnC come back into youth group, they bring a lot. Some kids we never see again because their parents like, if you do this, you never have to go back to church, which we try to ignore, or try to tell them that's not fair. So I think, there's just many steps, and getting them in the door. I believe in pizza. I think there's, or a fun game that it's not going to be all heady, because these kids are much more kinetic. You need to move around more, even in the discussions. We've had discussions walking a path at our church, and having them talk about it as we go, because just that walking for 10 minutes is powerful in terms that it lets them think in a different level. So just sitting down and talking and going over stuff is not what they want. They want they want movement, they want real conversation, and that just takes time for them to know that that's there for them, or that they even want it, And I find that even the mentors like it on the days that they're with them. They don't want to just sit there either. So I will not be working in the CnC program this year. And what I will miss the most is the youth who fight back, because those are the kids I love. They're using their voice, and sometimes using a microphone or an amplifier for them to hear their voices. A lot of the kids have never heard their voice, and to make it louder and to make it powerful, and for the people at church to hear them, or even themselves. That's the voice you want to hear. What's coming in here from the heart and the head is actually going out, and they hear teachers and they don't really listen to them. They get to listen to themselves for the first time. They get to work with the vestry. How powerful if you have a vestry in your church that they can meet with them and tell them what they want, or what their projects they're working on, and how could the vestry help. And for the most part, the vestry will try to come up with something they will do with them, but also a challenge. I think that by the time you get to the part at the end of confirmation class, and they are getting ready to recite their Bible verse and teach while they did it, the kids are like, oh, I'm going to throw up, or I'm not doing this. I refuse. Like, they get there that day and they're like, I'm not doing it. And I just go, okay, well, when it gets to you, just let us know what you want. Well, every kid ends up talking because they hear the other kids, and you always put one is strong in the beginning. And they're like, oh, there's like 200 people here looking at me and actually listening, and actually knowing or questioning what they're hearing from me. And that's pretty powerful. And often at the party afterwards, I've seen people in our parish go up to individual youth and talk about their passage with them, like, oh, I've never thought about it that way, or I didn't even know that was in the Bible. I find it interesting why you chose that. I'm not sure I would have, but I'm like, we don't really care what you would have done. We care what the youth are doing. So most of the adults, not the parents, because that's not their job till later, but adults engaging with kids again. This is a huge congregational building program, and not just for the youth or just the kids in CnC. You work it so that everybody's, getting involved. And there's not many confirmation programs that offer that have all those levels. And I often have adults that say to me, oh, I'll be a mentor, but I sometimes have to say no because they're not really matching any of the kids that, I had one person say, oh, I'll be the mentor because I love to talk. And I'm like, okay, that's not going to work because we're trying to get the youth to talk. So it's a lot of individual, a lot of selling. I'm not trying to sell a car, but I'm trying to sell them on what they will get from it. And that's tangible. They don't even know how much more they're going to get from it, right? And afterwards, and I've often had kids who've gone through the program before that have, it's been important to them, come back and speak at an introduction meeting. And, that's pretty powerful. When a teenager a few years older than you liked it so much, they're going to come back and say, oh, you guys should do this and blah, blah, blah. And, again, using their voice to encourage others to use their voice, pretty powerful.
How do you go about just recruiting in general for the program and convincing youth this is the thing to do? Or is it pretty self-explanatory because mom and dad just say, hey, this is what you're going to do?
Well, that's like why I talk to the parents and go, let your kids try it. We don't want to force them, right? You may want to force them. I have parents that go, well, they need it before they go away to college. No, they really don't need it before they go away to college. It would be helpful. It would be a gift to them. But from the beginning, it's, we send out a letter to the families, and I often send out a postcard to the kids because, they'll at least flip it and read it versus opening an envelope, and just tell them when we're meeting and telling them what, we're going to do at that first meeting. And no commitment. They don't have to say yes or no. This is just listening. So go do it again, a lot of one-on-one draw, especially if you have kids that just are on the fringe of your group or whatever. We often have kids that come from other churches, and that may happen for a lot of people can do things online together. And that helps if you have a really small youth group because it's really hard. So hey, I know that you're probably busy on Sunday, but it's 1 hour, and can you just come, and can you tell your coach that you'll be an hour late? Well, of course they can't, right? So they have to cancel that day. But we talk a lot about how committed they are. We acknowledge how committed they are. We acknowledge that between school and all the extra stuff and applying for college, if you're working with that age group, is overwhelming, and they just want to sit there on their phone and chill their brain out. So if they come to us, there's not a lot of chilling your brain out unless we're doing an exercise. So I'm very clear that I don't expect the kids to do it if they don't want to, but I'm very clear that they should try it. And that's why we try to get through the fall session, right? And I try to put a couple of field trips in the front there, and then we have our retreat. And I think that helps because they know they have an out. and they don't have to feel guilty if they choose not to. We always ask them to explain to us why they chose not to do it. And sometimes in that conversation, they end up staying. But, again, it's important to acknowledge their voice that they don't want to do it. And when some kids hear that, they're like, oh, okay. When they hear we're feeding them, that always helps. I'm a firm, like I said earlier, I'm a firm believer in pizza. I think the parents are often so, you have to do this. Or I have some parents who are like, oh, I don't really believe, I don't care if my kid believes, right? And I'm like, again, you don't know till you talk about it. You don't know till you learn more. And not just so much like what the Bible says or what the Nicene Creed says, but how you interpret it and how it's part of your life. And, you can't say that to a 14-year-old trying to get them to come in there. But, it, it's one-on-one, one-on-one, one-on-one. Sometimes if we have like the meeting, or if I'm at a youth group meeting, I push for them to come. I have bribed them, in all fairness, like if you're there, I'm going to have this certain food that they all like. And, just trying to step outside of they'll show up, because they won't, unless there's something in it for them other than their parents going, get over here, we're going, and those kids come into that meeting and they're like this. And, I'd collect all the phones, even from the parents who get so mad when I collect their phones. The kids have gotten used to it. They don't like it, and so when I pass the bowl around, I'm like, parents, you have to give up your phone too. Man, that gets a lot of kids' attention. And some parents do not respond. Whoa, I'm like, no, unless your mother's in the hospital, you're giving me your phone. And right there is a way for kids to go, oh, they're serious about this. My voice is going to matter. And I always have to tell everyone to turn their phones off, because in the meeting, all of a sudden different phone rings and alarms and everything. So, make sure they turn it off. And one of the kids said to me one time, that is the first time anyone has forced my parents to give up their phone. I can't believe they did that. And I said, well, that's kind of what we're going to ask of you, is to try things you're not used to trying, step outside your comfort zone, which is really what taking the phone is about. We had a young person serving communion, and I thought I'd collected all the phones, and they're up there, whatever they're doing at the communion, and all of a sudden the person's phone rings, right? So, there's music being played by the organ, we're giving communion, and so the look of panic on that person's face was worth every minute. And all the other kids, oh my God. So I just walked up, I got it from him, figured out how to turn it off, and he was mortified. And I said, so why didn't you give me the phone to begin with? Well, I didn't think it would ring. It's just the way 14-year-olds think. So for me, it was always one-on-one, often one-on-one with parents. Parents always go, well, we could come to half of them. Well, no, that's not what the program is. That's youth group, if you want to do youth group. And so sometimes explaining that commitment to the parents and making them understand the value of it. Because sometimes a parent has to give up a ski weekend. Well, we always do this on that weekend. I'm like, I'm sorry, then you either have to find another weekend, or maybe this program isn't for you. Again, giving them a choice. And I hate it when they go, okay, we're not doing it, but they're not meant to be there. And I can only, push them towards the group so much. There's only so many red vines, or for parents coffee, to get them to a meeting. So it's one-on-one.
So how many absences do you allow, or how does that work as far as,
We have, the way we've written it, if you look at it, and you of course can change it to what works for you, but the curriculum is one in the fall semester and one in the spring semester. Now, if somebody's grandfather has died, that's a different game. And we always ask them to meet with us if they've missed a class, or sometimes there's a few kids, and it can be for half an hour, but just sort of talking about what we talked about. If there's any kind of classwork, we have their mentor talk to them. The mentor can often catch them up. But to be honest, between you and I and all you people, I'm not as strong on that as maybe I should be, because kids have lives and I need to honor that. But I also tell them there's a consequence for it. You will need to talk about this or whatever. You don't get to just skip that lesson because it's important. And I think for kids, it's hard to have that commitment because, everything, be at school at this time, be at track practice at this time, eat your dinner, head to softball practice, whatever, so Sunday's supposed to be my free day. Well, we meet twice a month. You can have 2 other Sundays as your free day. Same for the parents, but it's, I think it's important to put that in the package because it says how serious we are. I had a mother that would take her kid out 45 minutes every week because he had a Boy Scout meeting. And they did not talk about that before they signed up. And halfway through, they finally had to drop because, a lot happens in 45 minutes in a class. So. But they got their silver award in Boy Scouts, so that's good.
Well, Kellor, I want to thank you so much for your time today. And to all of you out there, I just want to say, keep up the good work, keep persevering, and don't give up. I mean, that's you showing up is a great ministry of presence that I want to encourage you just to keep going. And thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you all. Good luck.